Today we're talking, like I said, I mentioned it earlier, we're talking about something that sounds relatively simple, and it is. It's very simple, but it can and does indeed cause a metric shit ton of confusion in the gym. But once you get a grasp on it, you come to realize it's actually pretty easy to get a grasp of. But without the basic knowledge, if you don't know, shit gets topsy-turvy. And that is strength versus hypertrophy. To make this as simple and dummy-proof as humanly possible, it's, are you training to lift heavier or are you training to look bigger? That's basically what the two of those both mean. Because believe it or not, those are not the same goal. Here's where it fucks people up. You walk into the gym with a vague idea of wanting to get strong and jacked and build muscle, which all sounds fucking great because it is, but they don't actually define which one they want to prioritize because most people don't realize there's a fucking difference. And that one goal is not the same as the other goal. You think if you just work out, you get strong and you get bigger and more defined, which is true to an extent. However, there is some very distinct differences between the two and very distinct paths that you have to take to reach each goal. So then what happens? They begin to perpetually train in this weird gray area where it's too heavy to accumulate real hypertrophy volume and too fatigued to build true maximal strength. They don't really specialize, so they don't really progress as optimally as they can. I know, I hate the word optimal, but it's true for this. Hard work without legitimately strategizing can severely stunt the gains and growth you could otherwise be getting. So today we're going to do our best to clear that shit up. What strength actually is, what hypertrophy actually is, the physiology behind each, and how they fucking differ. Because like I said, you would think they're the same fucking thing, but they are most definitely not. We'll also look at how variables can change, what rep ranges you should be looking at for each, how rest periods come into play, and how to structure your training around your real goal once you're able to define just what your specific goal actually is. By the end of the episode, you'll know exactly how to train based on what you actually want, as opposed to just guessing and assuming you're getting it done. Because guesswork, guess what? Does not get the job done. So let's jump right into it, shall we? We're going to start with strength. What is strength? When we talk about strength, what we're talking about is your ability to produce force. I produce a good amount of force after a hearty night of Taco Bell. Fart joke? I'm not above them. I'm not above fart jokes. I'm a dad. Okay? That's what we do. But that's not the kind of force we're talking about here. We're so fucking dumb. You tune into this shit. We're talking about force against gravity, force against resistance, and force in a coordinated, efficient way. Now, here's the thing that's going to throw you for a bit of a loop right off the bat. Strength is primarily a neurological adaptation. That's what throws a lot of people off, especially in those first few weeks of training. When you get stronger, especially as a beginner, you're not necessarily building huge amounts of new muscle right away. And we've talked about this before in the sense of noob gains. What you're doing is you're upgrading your nervous system to improve your motor unit recruitment, how many muscle fibers you can activate, your motor unit synchronization, how well those muscle fibers work together, and your intermuscular coordination, how well different muscles coordinate, and your rate of force development, or how quickly you can generate power. Those four things together get improved all in your brain, which is why you'll see a kid add 40 pounds of weight to their squat in just a few weeks without looking dramatically bigger. They had the force already, they just didn't know how to access it efficiently. Not a ton of new tissue was grown, but their brain and body learned how to use the muscles they already had. Strength is highly skill dependent. The more you practice a lift, the more efficient you become at it. The less wasted energy you'll use, the better your technique becomes, and the more stable you'll feel under the load. The same as practicing any other skill literally ever that you do. This is why most real power lifters specifically train low reps, and why they practice the same lifts repeatedly over and over, and why they rest so much longer between sets than your average lifter. Think of strength training like a performance rehearsal, teaching your nervous system to execute at high force levels. Now, here's something to remember when it comes to strength, though. Strength is very specific. You don't get strong at everything. You get strong at what you practice. Heavy barbell squats make you strong at heavy barbell squats. Not necessarily strong at lunges and not necessarily strong at the leg press. Obviously, the potential is there once those muscles begin to develop, but the movement itself needs to be practiced to really get applied. Strength is movement specific, and that's a massive distinction that you need to understand. Now that we know what strength is, let's look at the other side and talk about hypertrophy. You've heard me say hypertrophy a million fucking times. Hypertrophy. 1,000,001. But just what the fuck is it exactly? Hypertrophy, 1,000,002, is essentially structural adaptation within the muscles themselves. So strength is the mind, hypertrophy is the actual muscles. It is the increase of the individual muscle fiber size through mechanical tension, sufficient volume, progressive overloading, and appropriate recovery and nutrition. It's actually physically growing the muscle fiber tissue. Now, unlike strength, hypertrophy is a much slower process because building actual muscle fiber tissue takes time. You're synthesizing new contractile proteins. You're thickening muscle fibers. Increasing cross-sectional area. This is not a quick process by any means. It's very slow. This does not happen in a fucking week. Now, here's where the shit gets granular and separates from increasing strength. Hypertrophy is not necessarily about lifting heavy like strength is. It's about sufficient tension, sufficient volume, and sufficient proximity to failure. You can grow muscle in lower rep ranges, in moderate rep ranges, and in high rep ranges. Contrary to what you may have heard previously on the internet, what matters most is tension and total work overall. Hypertrophy is much less skill dependent. That's why I excel at it. It doesn't really require skill. It just requires force. Your biceps don't care if you curl with a barbell or dumbbells or how weight. They just care that they're getting the action they want and that they're getting sufficiently challenged. You can achieve hypertrophy with 50-pound curl dumbbells, or you can achieve it with 10-pound curl dumbbells. You'll just have to rack the 10s a lot more to reach the same point. You don't need to be strong for hypertrophy. You just need to be repetitive. To simplify this even further, think of it like this. Hypertrophy is muscle-focused and biased towards building size. Strength is movement-focused and biased towards moving more load. Now, hypertrophy training will make you stronger, and strength training will make you bigger. That's just a byproduct of training on either end of that spectrum. But they will each bias more their respective focus. One more time, hypertrophy trains muscles, strength trains movements. When you can make that distinction and learn how to apply it to your training, that will change everything about your progress and really give you the knowledge you need to absolutely fucking demolish your goals. Now, how specifically do we need to shift our training to prioritize each outcome, strength or hypertrophy? Here's where we need to get practical with the differences in programming. Let's look at rep ranges. For a focus on building strength, most work happens in that 1 to 5 rep range. There's a reason you see powerlifters doing maximum fucking loads for only 3 to 5 reps. They're not trying to get bigger, they're trying to move more weight. So why does the low reps work better for the goal? Heavy loads force high motor unit recruitment. You're practicing maximal force output. For hypertrophy, most work lives in the 6 to 15 rep range because moderate load allows for more time under tension, more volume accumulation, and more total fatigue per muscle, the main drivers of hypertrophy. There is some nuance here, obviously. Like I mentioned, low reps can still build muscle and high reps can still build strength. But when you bias lower reps, you will absolutely bias neural adaptation, which is what's going to build your strength. And when you bias moderate reps, you bias that structural growth for hypertrophy. It's all about emphasizing which direction you want to go in. It's not exclusivity. Okay, so that's rep ranges. What about volume? Because that's going to contribute differently to each as well. In strength training, you're going to look for lower total volume overall because lifting near maximal loads is neurologically expensive. It taxes your brain significantly. Hypertrophy training uses higher total volume, meaning more sets per muscle per week and more accumulated stimulus overall. Volume is the primary driver of hypertrophy, with intensity being the primary driver of strength. That's why when I'm programming for someone who's an advanced lifter, I'll usually give them 2 variations of the same day. I have one client now, he does a chest volume day and a chest intensity day. One day focuses on the strength, the other focuses on the hypertrophy. But it's not just about the work itself, it's also about the rest periods in between. We've talked about rest before and how it varies and how it can be more important. Strength training requires longer rests in between each set. Everyone makes fun of the older OGs who do one heavy bench press and then sit on the bench for 3 fucking minutes. Everybody looks at them like they're a fucking idiot. Sure, it looks fucking goofy, but that's because he's training for strength. You want 2 to 5 minutes of rest between heavy lifting strength training sets. And that's because, as we said, strength is more neurologically driven. It's going to tax your mind more. And your nervous system needs longer breaks to recover from lifts to produce maximal force again. Hypertrophy will benefit from shorter rest periods, 1 to 2 minutes, because partial fatigue helps drive metabolic stress and total volume accumulation. That's why bodybuilders will push more toward failure, whereas powerlifters will do 3 to 5 heavy reps and stop, even though they may still have lots of gas in the tank for that set. Long rest supports performance. Moderate rest supports growth. I say moderate as opposed to short rests because short rests like 30 to 60 seconds will actually bias toward more training muscle endurance. But that's for another episode. Then there's the final variable, exercise selection. What specific movements are you doing and do different workouts biased toward more strength or hypertrophy? And yes, obviously, otherwise I wouldn't have fucking mentioned it, would I? Chekhov's guns. That's a literary joke. One of you might get it. Read a fucking book. So in training for strength, you'll want more compound work. Barbell lifts, technical precision, form is crucial, specificity, and competition-style movements. If you're trying to gear toward hypertrophy, you'll want to use more machines, more isolation workouts, different angles tackling the same muscle, stability support. It's more about targeted tension in a smaller, more focused area as opposed to more general compound movements. Stimulating the muscle fibers themselves is more the goal as opposed to perfecting the lift itself as you would do in strength training. Okay, so all that makes sense? Yes, hopefully. Now we know the difference between strength training and hypertrophy training, but how do we apply it practically? What are some good programming examples you could do right now to help gear you toward your specific goal? Okay, let's take a look. Let's take a look at leg day specifically, and we'll compare 2 separate routines, one with a strength training focus and the other for hypertrophy. A strength-oriented leg day would look something like 5 sets of back squats, 3 reps each. That's not a lot, like at all. You're talking 15 reps total. But that's what we're looking at for strength. Then we continue with the back squat and do some pause squats. That's where we hold the bottom part of the movement for a pause rep before exploding back up. 3 sets of 3 reps again. Then we could do some Romanian deadlifts, shooting for 3 sets, 5 reps. Nothing above 5. You don't want to go above 5 reps here. And then ending the day with some light hamstring accessory training. Each of these sets with a 3 to 4 minute rest period in between. It might not seem like a lot, but that's a brutal fucking day for strength training in your legs. You will be fatigued and taxed mentally when it's all said and done. But it will yield improved force output. You'll help refine your technique and an increase in your neural efficiency so you can do it all better next time. And then when you have a good night's sleep, your brain will consolidate all that motor learning you did so you do better at it next time. Now let's take a look at the hypertrophy biased leg day. Okay, so we're going to start with back squats again. We'll keep it the same as strength day. But this time we're just doing 3 sets instead of the 5, and we're doing 8 to 10 reps each. Once you're done, we'll go over to the leg press and do 4 sets of leg press for 10 to 12 reps each. Now we're getting into those higher rep sets like we discussed. Walking lunges, 3 sets of 10. Hamstring curls, 3 sets of 15. And then ending off with some calf raises, 4 sets of 15. With a 60 to 90 second rest in between each set. Now you'll notice immediately that we're doing more reps and more sets overall with the hypertrophy training because we want more time under tension and volume training to really encourage that hypertrophic response in the muscles. But overall, both of these routines will take about the same amount of time when you do them in the gym because the rest periods are much shorter in the hypertrophy training routine. We're maximizing muscle stimulus, we're accumulating volume, and we're driving growth. 2 very credible routines, all training the same muscle group, but with different priorities. One training neurological performance and the other training muscle tissue. Okay, so that's the rundown on strength and hypertrophy training. And now we know how to apply it practically. But how do we know what we should be focused on as individuals? Should you be training for strength or should you be training for hypertrophy? Here's a few quick tips to help you figure it out. Number 1, are you a beginner? Then train with a hypertrophy bias. Build your muscle. Strength will just follow as a byproduct. Remember, it's not exclusive. Training for one won't completely eliminate the other. It will just bias toward the one you prioritize. Are you a power lifter? You want to become a power lifter? Then bias training for strength. Like I said, hypertrophy will support it. Are you training because you want more of a physique, bodybuilding competitions? Hypertrophy should be your first goal. Strength as the tool to help with the hypertrophy. And if you're just general population, then ask yourself, do I care more about the number on the bar or the reflection in the mirror? Most people just want to look better. They're not looking to throw a Buick above their heads. They just want to look in the mirror and like what they see. And if that's the case, hypertrophy-focused training with progressive overload is usually the smarter path to take in your routines. Now, I know I've thrown an absolute shit ton at you guys here today, and I don't expect you to remember it all. At the end of the day, though, when all is said and done, just remember these 2 simple things, and that should help you in your training when you're in the gym. Strength is neurological. Hypertrophy is structural. Oops. Strength is movement-based. Hypertrophy is muscle-based. Both matter. They're both important. You need them both in the end. You can't train one completely and not the other. They're going to bleed into each other somewhat anyway. But clarity on both will help you determine when to focus on which and vice versa. You can't optimize for both at maximum intensity at the same time. So choose a focus, train with intentionality, and adjust as you need to as you progress through your fitness journey. That is how you fine-tune your results and get you fucking jacked in no time.